everyone, welcome back. Today I am joined live by Dr. Jessica Papa. She is a pelvic health physical therapist. She has an amazing practice, a podcast, she's written books. She treats a wide variety of different conditions, but very passionate about pregnancy and postpartum. And that's what we'll be focused on today. So as we're going, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the comments. And she will be popping in here shortly. I see she's logged in. So here's her book. It is Postpartum is Forever. I agree wholeheartedly. Postpartum is forever. And additionally, we'll be talking about ways to manage it holistically and very specifically about myofascial release. If you have questions as she's getting logged in here, you can put them in ahead of time and I'll be sure to ask her. And if you have any questions for me, I'm here to take them as well. Also, I live in Oregon, which has beautiful trees, and right now we have forest fires, so my air filter is on. If you hear something running, hi, Dr. Jessica, how are you?
Good. Hey, Dr. Olson, I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for breaking from your busy clinic schedule to join me today.
Absolutely. My pleasure. I'm so excited to be here.
I was telling everybody that you do so many things. Do you want to start by telling us first about your practice, and then we'll talk about your podcast and your books?
Sure, I'd love to. So my practice is in Cranston, Rhode Island. It's called Arancia Physical Therapy. Somebody actually asked me this today, what does Arancia mean? It's actually an Italian word for orange. And that's actually how we explain what connective tissue is in the body to the layperson who's never heard of that before. So the tissue that sort of lays over our muscles that goes down to the cell level is analogous to the orange. We've got that outer round, hard, sort of dense part of the orange. And then inside, we've got the center pith connecting each slice together, and all the way down to the core of the orange is very similar to that ground substance of tissue in our body that gets dried out. That inner part of the orange that's white and and dry is like that tissue in our bodies. So everything is also connected by that clear translucent part of the orange where each slice is connected from. So similar to the connective tissue in our bodies. We do treat a lot of chronic pain here in pelvic health conditions. We take on a whole body mind approach here. So we always, do start at the pelvis, but we sometimes find many times that the origin of the issue stems far away from the pelvis. And we don't want to just do symptom relief, but really get a long lasting solution. So brick and mortar practice here, it started in 2016 with me actually going to my postpartum patients' homes, every few days, and then it just grew, and now we've got a nice team here. People come to us from all over. The majority of our patients commute about an hour to get here, so it is sometimes it's like a 3-hour experience between treatment and commuting, but we're more of a destination spot. So we do treat a lot of folks, in Connecticut, Mass, Florida. People come from Vermont and they end up renting a hotel and they do intensives here. So we sometimes see people 2 to 3 times in one day. And so it's a wonderful and rewarding experience.
Also very unique, and I love the analogy. And I don't know if this is how you trained, but we trained on our scalpel techniques for debridement using an orange.
Yes.
And the only other way that I knew what Arancia was because it's on the San Pellegrino. Not at all. But I love it, and I love the analogy, and I think that's so easy for people to understand about the different layers and about the connectivity and all the way down to the core and then throughout. I'm really passionate about, when people come in to see me for pelvic floor, I'm checking their feet, I'm checking their hip, might be checking their shoulder. I'm not going to specifically be treating the shoulder, but I'm interested in how it's moving, and I like how you frame that so that people better understand why we're not just focused on this little canister here that is the driver for why they're here, but there's other things.
Yeah, I think it's something like 95% of women with low back pain, it stems from a pelvic floor dysfunction. And so, to really look outside of that initial symptom area is huge.
Absolutely. And I've been so impressed with how fast your practice has grown. And then additionally, I was on your podcast years ago. during the pandemic. I think you had just started it and it's going strong. Talk about your guests and what kind of topics you like to do on your podcast.
Absolutely. That was a really unique time. It was a wonderful time to start a podcast and form new connections. And really, I had aimed to really I wanted to kind of spotlight other specialists in this field, and everybody has a unique sort of thing that they treat, and that's why I had reached out to you. And I loved your personal story and how you developed your brand and your products, because they've helped so many people. But I thought, like, what about other people who have never heard about this? And so I started the podcast. Originally, it was called Stay Healthy New England, and then I rebranded it to the Dr. Jess Show, really to kind of bring in wellness and nutrition and, spotlight folks in other states. And so it's been going on. I just did one at 11 today. So I was on another podcast about gut health and nutrition, talking to a PA. And so it's been really great to kind of keep that at the forefront for our current patients here, to learn from other practitioners as well. And we're not, specialists in everything. We're really good at chronic pain and pelvic health, but sometimes people come in with gut issues. Sometimes they come in, needing a referral for mental health or whatever it is. And so to kind of continue to get in touch with other trusted providers that we feel confident in, for our patients to also receive other disciplinary care is a good thing.
Absolutely. And those are so prevalent in our patient population, the digestive issues, and sometimes that inflammatory process from the gut is feeding into the pain cycle and into their perception of that pain. So important, and so important to have amazing other providers.
Absolutely. And the mental health piece too, tissue holds memory, tissue holds emotion. So your body remembers everything that ever happened to it. And we learn that in pain science, but also it's interesting because it's like you have a lot of different disciplines and specialists that care for the body in different ways. You have massage therapists and they treat the muscles, and you have heart doctors and they treat the cardiac system, and you've got, chiropractors, they treat the skeletal, the bones, but nobody wants to deal with the emotions, it seems like. And that's a huge, big part of healing here. And that's why we all are big on having private rooms here. You're not on display, because sometimes healing is messy and it's chaotic, and emotions, real emotions, dredge up, and it's a good thing to have happen. Believe it or not, we don't just rush for the tissues here. We try to help people kind of feel into those, because they can be a big contributing factor to your pelvic pain and symptoms. Or your shoulder and neck tension. And it's not something to shove down, but to soften into and try to feel, into those connections. So.
Yeah, and just holding that space and making it somewhere where those emotions can come up. And we know how to be there for them, and how to get other professional resources. And
you got it.
Well, I have your book here, and another one I was unaware entirely. So this, I believe, was your first.
That was my second book. I wrote that when I was pregnant with my first kiddo. I waited to finish it so I could share my labor and delivery journey, and my husband asked it, hey, can I write a chapter, honey? I said, yes, you can. And so write it. So his take on it all is in there. But my first book is here. It says Conquering Mystery Pain, How Myofascial Release Can Help Heal You, and a much younger version of me in 2019. But this is like my first baby, I like to joke. And this is John Barnes. He's one of my mentors, wrote my foreword. He's the father of myofascial release. And so, it was really an honor and for him to do that for me. I, like many other recent grads in 2013, had no idea about the fascial system. So I had a pamphlet come into my office one day about continuing ed and learning this. And I thought, all right, like this looks fun. It looks really exciting what was going to be covered. And I said, let me go to Arizona and learn. It's going to be great. I'll get my credits. And I had some thoracic pain at the time in my mid back. And who would have thought that a pelvic technique that they did would have taken it away completely? I sat there like, it was like a combination of being mystified and pissed off, because I'm like, what the heck? Why didn't I learn this in grad school? I do remember in anatomy cadaver lab telling us to move the fascia off the muscle because it was already a cadaver and dried out and dead. So, but they didn't go over the importance of fascia living now. And the cool thing now about research has come a long way is you can see it in vivo in real time. There is a French neurosurgeon. His name is Dr. John Guillemberto, who does study it in real time. He's got a cool book and research called Strolling Under the Skin. And so you can go look at that on YouTube and really kind of see what it looks like as fascia is kind of like sliding and gliding and changing. And just literally you can see like what it looks like as it's being incised and cut into. So that whole harmonious fibrillar network of tissue gets disrupted. So it goes from being like lattice and uniform to being a mangled mess in there. But it's a good description and a way to share it with patients because they don't necessarily realize that after you have a surgery and it goes well and everything, that because fascia is the first thing that gets cut into over muscle, the surgery might have went well, but you're going to have some discomfort underneath the surface, or obviously not the full range of motion for a little while. And you have to, the fascial system is water. I know we're talking a lot about tissue, but just to understand that you can't force a fluid system. So a lot of the things that people might think as a go-to might actually be matting down the fascia even more, compressing free nerve endings. And so the name of the game is to help bring the tissues back more into a parallel, uniform alignment to take stress off the system. And then that helps your muscles move better, and that takes pressure off your nerves. And it helps your alignment as well. It works together. It's always like good to have multiple tools in the toolbox to treat a person.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. And there was a question that had come up when we were preparing to give this talk together, asking you to elaborate on how myofascial techniques differ from other pain management techniques that are commonly used in pelvic health physical therapy settings.
Sure, I love that question. So just to back it up a little bit, because I know sometimes myofascial release in general kind of is used a little bit freely, I think. And the approach that I'm referring to is a really specific approach by the Barnes methods, John Barnes approach. And it's basically holding a restriction down with manual compression and stretch at the same time for a minimum of 5 minutes or more. Because at the 5-minute mark, your body starts to release a chemical called interleukin-8. And that's your body's natural pain, reliever and inflammation releaser. So instead of having to take anti-inflammatory meds, your body will release that chemical and it'll start to happen naturally for you. A lot of traditional approaches, hey, they're good, but it's shorter term relief because it's only the superficial structures getting released. So it's anything with movement like gliding or sliding over the surface. It's only getting that elastin release. It's too quick in and out of the system of the body. We need to hold at the barrier, and the barrier means every single person's body has a different barrier. There's over 7 billion people in the world, and there's over 7 billion different fascial patterns. So mine's going to be different than yours and the next person. So we hold down with a sustained amount of pressure, and it has to be enough so that you can't easily lift up and it's going to rebound, but you don't want to make the patient tense or be kind of holding against it, because again, you don't want to force fluid. That's only going to create more inflammation. But once you're at that depth barrier, and you really get good at finding that when you take a course of learn, then you wait and you add the stretch piece in. So because there's a series of chemical things that happen, and so mechanical things that happen during that 5 minutes as well. A part of it is vibration or pressure electricity. It's called piezoelectricity, and that's when your body is kind of like fascia in a sense. It's fluid, but we're treating the fourth phase of water in the body called liquid crystal. And so because the bones are crystallized fascia, it's like this pressure electric, wave starts to break away at that crystalline matrix of fascia, which is a really cool thing. And then it's awesome because the vibratory rates of the patient and the therapist start to align. And it's like this mechanotransduction effect where those vibratory rates are aligning, and it's helping to soften that ground substance of tissue, that nitty gritty tissue that's dried out of the water that it's made of. essentially we're trying to create resonance or ideally space in that web of mangled tissue so that when you do drink water again, it'll start to permeate down into those spaces and hydrate your cell fully at the cell level. Essentially, like most conditions, have a lot to do with inflammation or disease or lack of ease in the body. So by us doing this naturally and holistically, we're creating space overall for your body to open up, stand, move around more freely, and just feel better and lighter.
Incredible.
No, but so like those approaches are good, and I think they can be helpful, to use in conjunction. But if you don't address, the fascial system, it's a big missing link since it plays with the other systems in the body. It's the only system to touch all those other systems. So it's worthwhile learning about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for explaining that in such easy to understand terms. I love that.
Absolutely. It's something I'm very passionate about. I've seen the effects firsthand, during the continuing education classes, and it's just sparked my interest beyond what I ever thought. I mean, I didn't have a specialty going into that class, and I couldn't believe like how much more there was to learn, and really just catapulted my patient's healing 100%.
Absolutely. It's like a new way of looking at it. And I think that we look for what we know and we see what we look for. So adding to that horizon and the different tissue layers is imperative.
Oh yeah, exactly. It is. And the best way to experience it, quite honestly, for any therapist that might be listening, is to go get a treatment by somebody near you that does it. It's truly one of those approaches that's better to be felt than read about. Because then you'll understand it so much better.
Absolutely. And along those lines, do you want to talk about management of pain and other issues during pregnancy and postpartum, and why it's so important to get in for treatment during those times, even if it's not something that feels like it's terrible or getting in your way, or might think it's a normal part of having a baby. But those symptoms are common, but not necessarily normal.
Yeah, I love that phrase. I think that's an eye-opening phrase for a lot of people. So yeah, managing of pain symptoms, whether you're pregnant or postpartum, or even maybe trying to become pregnant, it's essential to not let something build up and not let something brew over time. So there's a lot of obviously physiological changes in anatomy and alignment that happen during pregnancy and postpartum as your body is surging a lot of hormones postpartum, and things become a little bit more ligamentously lax, and we can even be off balance a little bit. But I'm a big fan and a big believer of addressing something before it becomes a massive problem. So for me, and I wasn't always this way, but I am now through the continuing education I've learned. But that very first signal that your body gives you, that little flicker of something being off, we need to all get a little bit better at listening to that signal and not just writing it off, because our bodies are miraculous at knowing what's wrong. Our brains get in the way sometimes, and life goes on and we're busy and everything, but that little first signal of your body telling you that something is off is what I encourage people to listen to and to start to self-treat. So we actually give all of our patients a very gentle little myofascial release round ball. Most, your kids might have something safe that's not hard like a baseball right away or a tennis ball, but it can compress and give a little bit in its shape. So we have them soften in on the area of tenderness right with that tool, and we have them soften into that area for about 5 minutes or more, and let the compression help ease that symptom. Compression is a wonderful self-treatment approach in general, actually. I know it used to be the whole rice principle, and Dr. Merkin, who I think coined that in the 70s, actually changed it to start with compression, realizing that within that first 6 hours of injury, compression is the #1 thing to do to help dissipate the inflammation and pain and work on the mobility. So when you feel that signal of pain, it's so important to reach out to a provider right away. What do you have to lose? Nothing, but you gain more information at least, and you figure out what's going on so it doesn't snowball to become a bigger issue that might be more expensive down the line. And when you're pregnant, I think the question was, what to do for pains that you might be experiencing. I mean, you see an OB very regularly. You've got your scheduled appointments, and that's awesome for baby health. But I think a lot of things are obviously happening with mother that the body needs attention, even when you're not in a exacerbated amount of discomfort. Just to have regular treatment during pregnancy is massively helpful to have a wonderful delivery and the birthing experience, so that your body can be as neutral and level as it can be, to help baby come out with minimal chances of tearing during delivery, and just to feel optimal, to have less low back pains and sacral pains. Sometimes people get nerve pain down the legs and compression and swelling. So it's great to have women have regular care during all of the months that their body is significantly changing. But then postpartum, it's a whole new world. It's like you're going to be sleep deprived, and your body's going to do things you never thought it could do for a long time, and your body just adapts. That's amazing that we can do that. But to have a care provider like a pelvic therapist and specialist that's going to look after you and help basically encourage your pelvis to go back into the alignment that it was pre-baby is massively important, because it's not going to do that on its own. And you might have new discomforts in that sacral area, especially pelvic floor. You might be hesitant or nervous to have intercourse again. You might have, some accidents here and there with leaking of urine, and the first sort of bowel movement might be intimidating, but pelvic work can be especially important to help ease all that. And it really is becoming the new norm, and more OB providers I'm finding are encouraging their patients to do that. We work well together as a team, and so I highly encourage anybody, pregnant or postpartum, or actually even prenatal. We all can benefit from learning about pelvic therapy, in the sense that it's wonderful for people struggling with fertility. I mean, here we do a lot of fallopian tube release work. We help them that way with pelvic congestion as well. And sometimes it's restrictions in the diaphragm that are affecting the tension and relationship in the pelvic floor muscles. And there's a lot of accessory muscle breathing up here because of that improper relationship with the diaphragm. So a lot of education, and it might not be the only thing, but it could be one really helpful thing that you try.
Absolutely. And we got a question about 10 years postpartum. Can it still be fixed? And I think we both agree wholeheartedly, and I'll let you expand, that it is never too late. You come in 50 years postpartum, we will help you.
Absolutely. Never too late. And I do hear that quite often from some of our baby boom patients, and into the 80s and 90s patients that we've helped with bladder issues, is that they've known about it for a while, and they've been a little bit more reserved in sharing their story, but now they're seeing their daughters take action right away, and the daughters are like, "Mom, like, go to pelvic PT. What are you waiting for?" And I love that, because it's like the two opposite ends of the spectrum on age, and our generation is just ready to take action. We're getting informed. We don't want to wait. We don't want to buy pads forever, and we don't want to miss out on the things we love to do. So it's never too late. And just because you had, let's say a C-section, doesn't mean you're not necessarily going to have some of these things happen. Unfortunately, like, having a C-section could still contribute to incontinence. You could still develop a prolapse. You could still have, sacral issues. So don't think that, you're necessarily ruled out. It's good to still be in the know of what to look out for, and how to mitigate those issues.
Absolutely. I agree. I feel like our mothers and our grandmothers' generation, I think we're both millennials, and definitely just thought it was part of being a parent and delivering, and they just put up with it until we got better as pelvic PTs of marketing. Gen Z is not having it. They are in at the first sign of distress, and I love, and they have taken to their platforms, and they are helping us with education, which has been amazing. There's been a drastic change. I've been doing pelvic health for 16 years. There's been a drastic change in the last 5 years, and a lot of it is driven by media and social media, and people using their platforms to say, I had this thing. It's almost like how we would share, like, there's a sale on this important thing, you need to go here and get it.
Right.
go to pelvic health. They will help, and don't sit there and manage symptoms that are you don't have to live with.
Exactly. Just to touch on, how I learned and I became even more passionate about pelvic floor and this profession. Pelvic floor therapy is more of a personal for me. My grandmother had taken a bad fall years ago and needed home care. So she broke her hip. They came. She did great, but she was nervous. She wanted her granddaughter to be by her side. So I would go, every day. She'd get therapy. It was in the summer, so I could, have time. And that sparked my interest in PT in general. But then after she rehabbed from that, she started having some accidents here and there. And this was a woman who had one pace in life, and it was fast. You better believe this woman was like sharp as a tack. She just was go, 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 busy bee, all in all these different clubs. And she just she couldn't handle slow in life. So for her and her pelvic health to have this new thing and to be, embarrassed about it, to have to, basically it led to her decline. And then, all of the things that go on in the nursing home, and just kind of like her frustration with not being attended to in a timely manner. And then, then sooner or later they're giving you pads, and you just have to use those. And she wasn't really ready for those. And so that sparked again a fuel in me that I just couldn't let go. And I'm like, this is it. Like this is my thing. I want to do this. I want to help people, because incontinence is one of the main drivers of nursing home admissions. And so if we can talk more about that and just help people understand that even if you don't have this going on right now, let's just get you a wellness check and see what you can do to stay feeling good. Or if you've got something going on, what can we do to mitigate it so it doesn't progress, so you don't let it spiral.
Absolutely. And for people that aren't aware of that connection, incontinence leads to people being in a hurry to get to the restroom, which can result in slips and falls, and also getting up multiple times per night where there's poor vision. They can't see where they're going, and it is urgent, and that's when they experience falls, and those falls land them into care, and the survival rate is pretty poor at this time, usually within 2 years of a nasty spill. If they are not able to discharge, it's not good. So capping it at managing the incontinence and making sure they have good overall mobility is really important to the quality of life and to what that life looks like at the end.
Yeah, it's all about just what you said, quality of life. And it takes a big toll on you mentally and emotionally, I'm sure too. So it's huge.
Absolutely. And along those lines, thinking about, we touched on the mind and body connection. Do you want to elaborate about what that looks like from the myofascial approach and what it looks like in your clinical care?
Sure. So the mind and body connection is huge. Again, we do our head to toe assessments here, and we treat literally everything. You might be coming for pelvic floor, and we're always going to do craniosacral work, because again, sort of like those holding patterns in the pelvis can kind of, again, skew your ribs. They can skew your cranial bones, your jaw bones. But tissue holds memory and emotion. I guess I'll give you a nice example about this, in a sense of, maybe you are in treatment, or you're out somewhere, and all of a sudden you smell a scent that's familiar, and it takes you back in time to something that happened. And just like in that moment, you're flooded, like your heart rate goes up, you feel warm, you feel your eyes welling up. And that's just like a tissue memory thing that can happen. That can happen during treatment. And we're very in tune with that here, and understand that. And for us, we gently maybe probe but never pry. But the more history we have, the more help it is to your overall care here. And so a lot of times we do treat trauma patients. We've had patients sustain abuse in all different ways. We had somebody that was hit by a bus in here last week, and she's had multiple surgeries. And there's a fear of being in a car, and just going outside and walking for her. And so, like, imagine the alarms that are sounding in her body. So tissue memory is a huge piece, and everybody has it. So yeah, it's just one of those things that it's a huge, amazing thing to kind of incorporate into your sessions for the therapist listening in, to not neglect. And at first, it might be a little bit intimidating if you're not used to doing that with patients, but even dialoguing in a way that allows for more sort of feeling instead of always the left brain chatter, because sometimes when we talk with the whole session, a lot of that therapeutic healing isn't happening because they're not tuning into what they feel. So it's important to talk, but at times it's also very important to quiet down.
Absolutely. And I think finally, do you have a favorite Intimate Rose tool or multiple favorite Intimate Rose tools that you like to implement with your
I
management?
do walk you out front where they're all on our nice, our shelf out front in the waiting room, but we pretty much have every single pelvic patient start with a wand, maybe 3 to 4 visits in. Yes, exactly. Of course, we have the blue ones for our male patients, but most people don't care, and if they want one that vibrates, that's great too. But we wait about 3 visits in. They start with the pelvic wand, and we coach them on to how to gently release. A lot of people also towards the end phase of their care, third phase is we're starting to bring strength back in, so we'll get the pelvic weights, the Kegel weights, and so those are instrumental as well, because it's a really great tool that people can actually feel like their body is working with them, versus trying to find the pelvic floor muscle groups on their own. It's a wonderful tactile feedback too. I love that. And not all of our patients are going to actually get to that last purple color, but they feel good when they're jumping colors and they're feeling like, oh, I'm making progress. I'm able to hold this weight in now. So I love all of those, and all of our patients have done wonderful with them. And at first, yeah, they might be like a little intimidated, and that's why we wait 3 to 4 visits in. But they're like, I know this is going to help. I want to keep my results. It's a massive investment in their time, in their day to carve out for therapy. So we always use, the wands for them to even be more successful.
I love that. Yeah, the vaginal weights, the original inception was a metal cone. They were called cones in the 1980s, but the purpose and the intention was proprioceptive input to draw the patient's awareness in their brain to where the pelvic floor is located. And I still strongly stand by that is the physiological input and driver of success using them. And it allows them to build the coordination and the strength and the endurance that they need.
Absolutely. And a lot of feedback from our patients. They love that it's got that skin feel. Some of our patients have tried other products, and not to knock any other product, it's just it's a better feeling when it feels more like skin. And so it's great to have that as a feature, and easily cleanable and all that. So a lot of our patients too, our female patients, do end up bringing their husbands in, and so it's nice when they have a better understanding of, all right, what is it, why are they using this tool, and so we'll come in on the discovery visit and they'll learn it together, and it becomes a good part of the support system.
I love it when partners come in. It is such a great opportunity to answer their questions, for them to see what treatment is like, to back up our patient emotionally and help explain so that the partner understands. I love that.
I do too. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Is there anything else that you would like people to know about your work?
I think the biggest thing is just to kind of reiterate that just because you don't necessarily have a pelvic floor concern or dysfunction doesn't mean you don't have to treat your pelvic floor. I think if I could give like one tip away right now for everybody to start to incorporate in their day is, a nice pelvic bowl release. I like for patients to do this in the morning or at night, at the start or end of the day, or even both, for 5 to 7 minutes, just to lay on your back. Let the inner thighs open up, the soles of your feet to come together. Maybe place one hand on each inner thigh and just start to soften and feel that tension and that stress go away. Feel the lengthening that's happening in the inner thighs into the pelvic bowl, and connect in your breath. I like to use an elevator analogy. So as you can imagine, an elevator goes up and down. So as you take that nice deep breath in, just picture the elevator coming down. And as you exhale, picture it coming up, and put on a nice, frequency, like a solfeggio frequency, and you can really kind of tune off your left brain chatter. But this will really help you kind of center and really feel into your body. And the lighter you can be in your center of gravity, in your pelvic bones, the better you're going to feel, and the better you're going to walk, and the more rooted to the earth you're going to feel.
Love that. That's an amazing tip, and one that can be implemented by anyone in a space just the size of them.
Yes, everybody has a pelvic floor. Nobody's so it's something to incorporate if you can daily.
Absolutely. It looks like we have a question. How do you help patients that are not local? Do you have courses or other resources?
Yeah, great question. So we do offer telehealth visits. So a lot of times we'll treat over Zoom, and do that. Everybody does that here initially over Zoom. We do a 30-minute pre-session to actually make sure that we're able to help you before we start you. And so what we do hybrid here as well. So sometimes people start with telehealth and then they make the trip down. And then other times we do like to help connect people with other providers, just so they can get that hands-on piece. It's very important. I very much believe in having the manual work as well. And so there's a directory that we often check to look for providers to link them up. And we have a lot of courses, not a lot of courses, excuse me. We have a lot of resources on our website. It's aranciapt.com, free pain guides and assessments and things like that. Plenty of videos up there as well. We've got a YouTube channel, Arancia Physical Therapy. Feel free to reach out to us here on Instagram at Arancia PT. We always love to field questions and help. Really, or the biggest thing that never gets underestimated on us, and we're, we love to hear people's stories. And even if we don't work together, the very most important thing I think a practice can do is listen and understand your story. Because if we don't get that part right, then we're not going to, potentially get the next part right in terms of treatment and care. I think a lot of care is rushed these days, and the first most important thing that should happen is to hear someone's full-on story. And if that takes a half hour, it takes an hour, it takes an hour. And so we've built that into our practice in a way where we have unlimited time to really just get to listen and see if we're a good fit.
I love that. That's one of the best gifts, is allowing someone to be heard, and a lot of times for the first time, because unfortunately a lot of providers simply don't have the time, and they have high patient volumes, and they're well intended and certainly there to help, but they don't necessarily have that option available. So I think it's so special that you offer that.
It's true. It's funny a little bit because initially people will call and they'll just start saying, hi, I have this insurance and I can come on this day and time, and we're kind of like, hey, in case you didn't catch it, this is Dr. Jess, or this is Andy, or this is Corey. What's your name? And just like, let's be, human. Let's have a conversation. We've got the time for you. And then it goes really well. It's like they realize they can take a breath and they don't have to rush and get it all out in 2 minutes. And
I love that.
yeah,
that's amazing and unique.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, we've got your website posted here. People can follow you at both your personal Dr. Jessica Papa and Arancia PT, and then on your website. And then amazing that you offer telehealth. And if you're in New England and available to make the drive, well worth it to go see her in person.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for giving your time and your expertise. I appreciate you so much.
Great to be on. Let's do it again soon.
Yes, let's do it.
Thank
Have
you.
a great rest of your day.
You too.